Of all the movie genres out there, action might be the bluntest and least subtle of them all. Still, some action films can absolutely be smart and sly when they want to be, to the point where creative filmmakers can even have additional stories and subplots going on just beneath the surface. So with these following unspoken plot points in mind, brought to you with some help by the fine folk over at Our Movie Details, you'll certainly never watch these 10 classic action movies quite the same way again. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are the 10 greatest unspoken action movie plot points.
Want to stay safe online and save big? Get up to 76% off a 2-year NordVPN plan, plus 4 months free and up to a $50 Amazon gift card. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description and it's all yours.
Number 10. The secret romantic subplot, Die Hard. In the midst of John McTiernan's all-timer action classic Die Hard, there's an unexpected love story hidden in plain sight beyond John McClane's desperate quest to save his estranged wife, Holly. See, early on in the film, before Hans Gruber and his men descend on the Nakatomi Plaza, a drunk couple accidentally bursts in on John, and once the hostage scenario unfolds, we briefly see the couple being accosted by the terrorists while in a state of undress. But in a cute yet unnecessary detail, at the very end of the film when the day has been saved, the couple can again briefly be seen still together on the right-hand side of the screen, firmly embracing one another. Given that this looked like nothing more than just a boozy office hookup, and it would have surprised no one if they went their separate ways once the bullets started flying, it is strangely heartwarming to know that they stuck together and made it through. Number 9. The stolen painting is a real stolen painting, Skyfall. You might remember that, midway through Skyfall, James Bond visits Shanghai and watches as a man is lured to be assassinated by being shown what's assumed to be a valuable stolen painting. And funnily enough, this wasn't just some random piece of art mocked up by the film's art department. It actually was a replica of a real piece of stolen artwork. The piece is called A Woman with a Fan, which was a 1919 painting that was stolen from Paris in 2010 and has yet to be recovered. And given that Skyfall started shooting in late 2011, the theft was certainly still major news at the time, and incorporating it into the world of the movie was fun for fine art lovers, even if most anybody else missed it. And interestingly enough, this isn't actually the first time the Bond franchise has worked a real-life art crime into the fabric of its own universe. That's because the very first flick, Dr. No, slyly revealed that Francisco Goya's painting, Portrait of the Duke of Wellington, which was missing at the time of shooting, had been appropriated by the titular villain and now resided in his lair. Number 8. John rescued a dog from being put down, John Wick. As surprisingly entertaining as the mythology and overall world building is, John Wick isn't exactly a movie that people watch for subtle plot details. That said, the first film does hide a fascinating secret plot point in plain sight right at the very end. That's because the movie concludes with John breaking into an animal clinic and liberating a pit bull, yet what can be easily missed is that John wasn't simply stealing somebody else's dog to replace his own lost one. In fact, the dog in question was instead waiting to be euthanized, evidenced by a sheet of paper next to the dog's cage, which has "to be put down" stamped on it. Beyond the fact that John isn't making off with anyone's beloved canine simply being taken to the vet, it's fitting that John, a man who has avoided being put down himself more times than he can possibly count, saves a kindred animal from death. Number 7. Ruth Bader Ginsburg wanted to join the X-Force, Deadpool 2. Perhaps the funniest sequence in Deadpool 2 sees the Merc with a mouth and Weasel auditioning potential members for their X-Force team. But one of the best and most suggestive moments in the scene appears on screen for all of about a half a second right at the very start, when we see Deadpool and Weasel leafing through headshots of possible teammates. That's because the first headshot among the bunch is none other than the late Associate Justice of the American Supreme Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Given that the duo are presumably only reading through applications sent to them, we're left to assume that Ginsburg, who was 85-year-old at the time of the film's release, somehow got wind of the X-Force's formation and wanted a piece of the action. To make matters even more hilarious, Ginsburg's headshot even refers to her as the notorious RBG. Number 6. Solomon Lane hyperventilates for a very good reason. Mission Impossible Fallout. It's always satisfying to watch an action film that really pays attention to the most minor character details, and that no matter how fundamentally ridiculous things might be getting, there's always something interesting to keep your eyes peeled for. And that's certainly true of the sublime Mission Impossible Fallout, which features a memorable sequence where Ethan Hunt and his crew are tasked with breaking villain Solomon Lane out of a police convoy. They knock the van containing Lane into a body of water, at which point the vehicle starts filling up, much to Lane's understandable concern. Lane is then eventually saved from drowning by Hunt and Co., but before that happens, you might notice the villain taking what appear to be numerous huge panic-stricken breaths. But that's not actually what a customer as cool as Lane is really doing here. Instead, he's intentionally hyperventilating in an attempt to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in his blood and buy vital extra seconds of consciousness before he succumbs to the water. Number 5. Leon's plant definitely dies at the end, just like him, Leon. It's in no way a subtle plot point in Leon that the titular assassin's houseplant is basically symbolic of the man himself, rootless and, at the movie's end, planted in place by Matilda. But the metaphor actually goes a little bit deeper than you might realize, whether intentionally or not. See, the plant is a type of aglaonema, a Chinese evergreen known for its intolerance of cold temperatures. And so, when the character decides to plant Leon's plant in a field near the local school, she doesn't realize that she's actually just killing it dead. The plant has no chance of surviving the harsh New York winter while taking root on the field and being exposed to the frosty elements. Within that context, the true symbolism of the plant can be interpreted a multitude of extra ways, perhaps most obviously that it died when it took root, just like Leon himself. Number 4. Airlines let you carry swords in this universe. Kill Bill Volume 1. The Kill Bill movies take place in a world that's somewhat recognizable, yet clearly heightened and detached from our own reality, as is perhaps best evidenced when the bride hops on a plane in Volume 1. Look closely and you'll see that those armrests on the plane seats are actually sword holders, with the bride keeping her samurai sword sheathed at her side. It's such a ridiculous yet fascinating detail that in the world of the Kill Bill movies, enough people carry swords, and they're enough of an accepted daily tool no less, that airlines let you take them on planes and seemingly even actively cater to them. Perhaps it's simply a perk afforded by the film's fictional airline Air, but all the same it says a lot about the world of the movie, where violence is evidently just part of doing business in daily life. Number 3. The enemy airstrip is literally in the middle of nowhere. Top Gun Maverick. Top Gun Maverick categorically refuses to identify the rogue country whose unsanctioned uranium enrichment plant Maverick and his team are tasked with destroying. It was obviously a diplomatic, commercially motivated choice to ensure the film didn't anger any of the usual suspects and risk harming its precious box office. But beyond leaving audiences to ponder exactly which nation the enemy aircraft are from, the movie doubles down on presenting the antagonists as neutrally as possible by having their location be in the literal middle of nowhere. We briefly see a map of the nearby airstrip where Maverick and Rooster end up in the third act, complete with coordinates. And those coordinates aren't just made up or plucked out of thin air, they correspond precisely with Point Nemo, aka the oceanic pole of inaccessibility. And this is the place in the ocean that is the farthest from any land, surrounded by roughly 1,670 miles of water in any direction. So this ensures that nobody could read the coordinates in the movie and then assign the airstrip to any particular nation. Number 2. Chancellor Sutler's secret drug use, V for Vendetta. V for Vendetta's primary antagonist is High Chancellor Adam Sutler, who, if you're really paying attention, you might have noticed frequently has dilated pupils throughout the movie. Now, this might seem like a pretty typical attempt to make the character seem off to the audience, but there's actually more going on than just that. That's because it's effectively implying that the character is abusing drugs, given that there are a bevy of drugs, of course, which can cause dilated pupils, and dilated pupils in movies is often used as a shorthand for drug use. The reason for this? Well, it's no secret that the racist, tyrannical villain is heavily inspired by Adolf Hitler, who himself became addicted to stimulants during the end of World War II. This is simply yet another of many parallels between the two, and knowing that Sutler was high off his arse for basically the entire movie certainly paints him and his actions in a whole other, potentially even more disturbing light. Number 1. McDonald's possibly still exists. Mad Max Fury Road. One of the many great things about Mad Max Fury Road is how it organically doles out its world building throughout the movie, both through its mesmerizing visuals and unique sense of unconventional language. One such moment occurs during the movie when Nux has a heart-to-heart with his love interest and tells her, "I should be walking with the immorta, McFeasting with the heroes of all time." Now, it's incredibly easy miss, but yes, the character actually says McFeasting here, which is presumably a reference to McDonald's and suggests a couple of interesting things about the world of the movie. For one, McDonald's is in the very least still remembered in this post-apocalyptic hell, whether it's somehow still around in some form or not. It's also reasonable to assume that this is possibly part of Immortan Joe's rhetoric spewed by his war boys. See, having presumably lived a long portion of his life prior to the apocalypse, Joe lifted elements from commercial culture like McDonald's and referring to the water as aqua-cola to regale and indoctrinate his followers. Whatever you take away from it though, the bizarre McDonald's reference only further compounds the film's sledgehammer subtle critique of capitalism, which one way or another remains woven into the lives of those living in the wasteland.